Hello and welcome to Gardener's World. A few of you might be a bit surprised, but Monty's away for a week, so I get to play in my garden for a whole hour, which feels pretty exciting, it really does. I'm just adding a little bit of detail to the woodland here. I've got the gravel path that comes down the front, and I've played with these primulas in the path, and I'm just starting to now feed them into the front of this woodland, and they'll work really well in semi-shady conditions quite happily. And here as well, the soil is really quite moist. What I love about them is you've got these series of beautiful bells that make this near-perfect globe. Been here for about 3 years now. If I'm honest, it's taken me that long to really get my head round the garden and start to understand it. And on top of that, I think it's only sort of now that I'm starting to add my personality to the space. On today's programme, Carol celebrates a spectacular display of tulips at Dunsborough Park in Surrey.
Tulips are such magical bulbs to incorporate into your garden and so brilliant to mix with other plants.
We meet a passionate elder enthusiast who's made growing these beautiful plants his life's work.
This is a hybrid I did in 2011. It has very large flowers. They can get as big as a dustbin lid.
And I'll be adding some hedging around a new water feature and then something just a little bit different to the veg garden. As you can imagine, I've not sat still over the winter months. I've been busy digging up areas of the lawn, and I've now created myself another bed. But I've really prepped this soil, so I've done lots of manure in, and then started with the structural planting, which I've put in at the back there. And yeah, I have spent a few quid on the larger shrubs, but most of them were presents. My kids think I'm a little bit sad because I asked for, oh, can I have a salix for Christmas? And then I've started to build, put this rhythm all the way through with the cardoons and the lictrums. But today I just want to put a little bit more colour through the border. So I've got this euphorbia fireglow, which is a fantastic plant actually. It's a hard worker, but when it first comes out of the ground, it literally does look like little flames. Put a couple in about a week ago to see how they looked, and I'm pleased. So what I do now is just start to build on that. And then I've got this polemonium, which is Bressingham purple. Really lovely plant that just keeps flowering and flowering. And I put this Cirsium in down here, which has got a beautiful sort of ruby flower. When you put the blue next to that, you can see they're just going to work really well together. So I'm pleased with that. And then this Geum, totally tangerine, which for me has got to be one of the best ones. Do you know, I used to avoid orange for years, but it's interesting, you know, set alone, it can be really quite fiery and I suppose glary even, but the moment you start to blend it with things like the blues, it becomes a completely different creature. And these really work hard, work in most soils, but they'll keep flowering if you keep trimming them back. And then I just sort of keep building, working it along the border. So actually, if I get down, I can really start to understand that rhythm. What I've got to do now is get them in. When I'm digging holes, I always make sure the hole is about twice the size of the pot. Don't plant them too deep. Make sure that when you're filling back in around the plant, you break this soil up. You don't want any air pockets. Do you know, I think euphorbia is maybe a slightly underrated plant. I think this time of year, they really bring life to the garden. I just work that in. And I can see now I've got that Calamagrostis sat at the back there, it's strong, vertical, and the euphorbia will just clump up and sit really nice in front of it. Get up to about a metre, I suppose. This polemonium's a beautiful plant, and I've got it at the edge of the woodland as well, so it will grow in sun, but also happily in sort of semi-shade. But I'm going to show you something with this. I can actually feel that these are quite soft, which means they've probably been grown under glass or in a tunnel. So what I'm going to do, you think I'm mad, I'm just going to cut those flowers off. And what'll happen now is that plant, the roots will get down into the ground and it will flower in a few weeks' time. Probably normally sit, again, just under a metre. There's something really satisfying, isn't there, about adding new plants to your garden. See? Wow, that does need breaking up. So that's probably last year's stock. If I don't break that up, what will happen is very likely the roots will just keep going round in circles. It might look a bit rough, but that will stimulate the growth. We can be a little bit driven at times by colour, but if you look in here, I've got some really lovely contrasting foliages. You've got the cirsium, which has got a beautiful thistly leaf, and then you've got your geum here, a different foliage again. Even when that flower's gone, there's still going to be interest that carries you through the season. All right, let's get these last two in. So, that will flower its little heart out, and I'll keep deadheading it, and it will keep going probably for a couple of months. Get up to 2 to 3 foot, so nearly a metre of flower on there. Soil-wise, it just loves a sort of a reasonable garden soil. Decent amount of moisture content in there as well, and it'll be happy as Larry. So we water this in well, settle that soil in around the roots, and then the border will really kick on through the season, giving me that sort of contrast of colour and foliage. But this time of year, who does not love a tulip? And Carol has gone to Dunsborough Park in Surrey to enjoy their wonderful display.
Tulips make you happy. They're one of our most popular bulbs and surely the most charismatic by far. They're so diverse and the colour range is unbelievable. Look at each one individually and it's a masterpiece. But see them en masse and the impact is truly breathtaking. The tulip is a member of the lily family and there are around 75 species with many more hybrids. They come in a myriad of forms and are divided into 15 different groups with names like Double Early, Darwin and Triumph, which reflect differences in their flower size, structure, form and habit. Now these are highly cultivated tulips, but their wild ancestors live up in the mountains all along the Tian Shan range, which stretches from China right through to Turkey. And winters there are freezing cold, whereas summers are hugely hot. And that's exactly what tulip bulbs need. They've evolved to live under those conditions. The more we can replicate those conditions, the happier our tulips are going to be. Tulips are such magical bulbs to incorporate into your garden, and so brilliant to mix with other plants. How about that for a vivacious combination? It's full of the joys of spring. This gorgeous creamy white tulip is Purissima, otherwise known as White Emperor. And here it's accompanied by a classic daffodil. This is Thalia, one of the Triandrous stuffs, and it's just so gorgeous. And then if you look underneath, this is a really exciting part. You can see the things that are going to take over from the tulips. When they're finished, there's big clumps of geraniums here, and the whole thing is overlooked by these gorgeous wisteria. It's just delightful. It makes you wish you'd done it yourself. This is a really exciting planting. The whole idea is that the colour is graded from palest yellow through brilliant yellows to oranges and ending up with almost fiery reds. It's a lovely idea. These are all Darwin tulips, most of them forms of appledorn. If you see any tulip with appledorn in its title, you can bet it's going to be a really grand tulip. I love the way they've used it so simply with this blue muscari. You don't even need a garden really, just in a container. You're planting up your muscari and your tulips at the same time and then waiting for the next spring to let them rip. You nearly need your sunglasses on to look at this border. It's just so full of vibrant colour. This one's called Tompoos and it's a triumph tulip, really strong and steadfast. But here's oranges on. This is a Darwin, and Darwins are really reliable tulips that'll come up year after year often. But what's so striking here is the way that they combined with these emerging perennials. Look at this rheum, ace of hearts, and it goes perfectly with this tulip, but equally well with oranges on here. So you can glory in the tulips now and look forward with anticipation to what's coming next. This is the tulip meadow. It's glorious. Here, tulips are planted randomly in the grass under these huge oak trees. The whole idea is that when you're growing tulips normally, you'll grow them for the first year and they're absolutely magnificent. But in their second year, very often people will just discard them. The flowers aren't quite as good, the tulips aren't quite so spectacular. But here, instead of doing that, they bring them all over to the meadow and they plant them. They all blend together brilliantly, creating this sort of impressionistic effect. One other thing that I love about it is because some of these tulips are early, some of them are later, so this display will continue for weeks and weeks. And doesn't it just make you joyous looking at it? Everybody can grow tulips successfully. Just follow a few simple guidelines. First of all, choose really good bulbs. When you've got your bulbs, choose the sunniest spot you can and dig your holes nice and deep. 8 inches isn't too deep. And if your soil is on the heavy side, then line the holes with grit and incorporate some to the planting mixture as well. They need good drainage. Plant them late. Here they plant them in December, and that guarantees that you're going to get flowers of really good quality because they'll be subject to that period of cold. When they've finished flowering, don't let them go to seed. Take off the flowering stem, but let the foliage die back down into the bulbs because that will swell them and give you better flowers the next year. And if you've no garden, no worry. They love growing in pots. I love tulips. I love their colour, their diversity, the difference in their forms. They're beautiful, and at this time of year, nothing can hold a candle to them.
I love Carol's enthusiasm every time she's talking about a plant, whatever it is. But I can't help but agree with that. Tulips, they are absolutely magical. Do you know what I love about gardens, though, is they really carry you through the season. You know, as one thing disappears, another arrives. And, wow, look, the wistaria's doing its thing. I so wish you could smell that. It's saying to me, summer really is on the way. Meet Tom, everyone. This is our 17-year-old, slightly ancient cat. So those of you that are at home are saying, where are those dogs? At least you've got the cat. If there's one place in this garden that is my favourite and I'm drawn to, it's got to be this, the veg garden. For me, it's the place where I come and I play and experiment. Even in year one, we were growing things like wasabi. And then last year, I took on the challenge of growing samphire, which is ultimately a marsh plant that lives on salt water. So you're trying to recreate that in a container. And I'd like to say that it was a fantastic success, but it really wasn't. I'm blaming the kids. I went away for a couple of weeks and they didn't do the watering properly. But this year, I've come across a plant called agretti. It's an Italian vegetable, so it deals with those dry, hot conditions. I think the Italians call it monk's beard. We've already done some, but I've ended up with about 40% germination. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to try and change the mix to far more open compost to see if we can make that slightly more successful. So what I've done this time is I've created a mix of peat-free compost, some horticultural sand and a lot more perlite. So I'm trying to keep this compost really nice and open. Sometimes I'm just looking to where a plant grows in nature and think, can I create as close to those conditions as possible? Though I can't take us down to Italy and the wonderful Mediterranean, I can try and create that in the greenhouse. And then what I'm going to do now is I'm just going to pop it over there. I'm going to water it. Then I'm not watering afterwards and I'm not washing the seed anywhere. I'm just going to go across now and just make a tiny little hole that sits just shy of 1 centimetre into the compost. This is a wonderful plant to actually taste, but you could saute it, steam it, even use it on a salad. It's lovely with sort of lemon and olive oil. I'm sounding like a chef, aren't I? I was quite impressed anyway. And these probably realistically won't go in the ground till about sort of end of May, first couple of weeks in June. And I think with this, even if you get a success rate of 50%, you're doing really well. And I think part of the reason that we grow these slightly more unusual vegetables is for the fun. So they're all in, and all I'm going to do now, just to make sure there's no real big lumps in the compost, is we're just going to work that across. And we'll very, very carefully just take away the worst, so I'm not moving any of the seeds. And so, far more open compost compared to what we've done before, so it'll be interesting to see how successful they are. You know, as designers, you're asked a lot of time where your inspiration comes from, and sometimes it can be from the simplest place. And it was just the windows behind me, those sort of Georgian layout, and I started to draw that out. And I was left with this sort of central section, and I put bigger beds around it. But it makes you realise that you do not need a lot of space to grow a decent amount of vegetables. You know, we got so much out of here. And these beds are literally less than 1 metre each, but we've got strawberries, I've got the broad beans, I've got the garlic, and now I'm going to plant some kohlrabi. This is a fantastic vegetable that I can remember growing, working with Jeff Hamilton, so we're talking 20 plus years ago. But it's beautiful, it's got a lovely sort of nutty flavour to it, and this is a lovely sort of purple variety called Azure Star. What I'm going to do to start with is just create myself a little drill that's about 1 centimetre. And now I'm going to water that so that when my seeds go in, they're not going to get washed away. And then when it comes to the sowing, I'm just going to sow these really thinly. And as they get growing, I will thin them out. I think what's lovely about this veg as well is if you struggle, you know, maybe with growing Swedes or turnips, and it's a good replacement. It just amazes me that it's not caught on as much as some of the other sort of so-called trendy veggies. But there you go, nice and simple. So I'll put that board back in, just work that carefully across. As far as harvesting, you know, probably in about 8 weeks' time, something like that, I could start pulling some of the smaller ones. But remember, they could stay. You know, I could be lifting those in December time. You can even use the leaves as well, a bit like spinach. So lots of different ways to cook it. We'll label this up, kohlrabi. So, you might be getting the idea that I'm a little bit keen on growing these probably slightly more unusual vegetables. Mrs. Frost and the kids keep taking the mickey out of me because I want to talk about veg. But that's one of the things I love about horticulture and gardening is that you get people that get slightly maybe obsessed with one thing and then they grow it for the rest of their lives. And last summer we went off to Worcestershire to meet a man that's just a little bit keen about growing elders.
I'm Ed Brown. I'm the National Collection holder of elderflowers. I just like them. They're easy to look after, anyone can grow them. They're beautiful. They're overlooked by people. There's more to an elder than just that weed in a hedge. There are 126 named varieties of elderflower, and I have bred another 11 new varieties. But I'm very selective. It takes a long time for me to choose. I might grow thousands and thousands of plants to produce just one good plant, and that could take 5 years. This is my nerdy side. This is Sambucus nigra, crossed canadensis. It's a hybrid I did in 2011. It has particularly good, very large flowers. In a good year, they can get as big as a dustbin lid. Naming plants is a bit difficult, so I just generally look at what's around me, and so I came down the lane and I walked through the gate into the field. So Sambucus, gate in field. I realised one day when walking through the collection field that all of my elders look, smell and taste different. So some have a citrus scent, some smell of burnt rubber, some smell of oranges. What it's caused is my mind to explode into wanting to breed more new flavours for cordial and champagne. I've been making elderflower champagne for 7 years. This is the red one. I'm really pleased with the colour. It has amazing scent and amazing flavour. This is Sambucus chocolate marzipan. It has black leaves on the top and mint green leaves underneath. And it has the most amazing marzipan scented flowers. That marzipan scent comes right through into the cordial. Down here, I have Sambucus black cherries. The darkest one I've ever produced. It's got amazing dark underside to the petals. This comes right through into your cordial. And amazingly, it tastes of cherries. Harvesting your elderflowers is about respect for the plant. Respect your elders. So, when you're harvesting elderflowers, try and avoid cutting more than 30% off your tree in a year. If you cut all of the flowers off, it will try and reflower again the same year. This depletes the plant and you will end up losing the plant eventually. So remember, respect your elders, only cut off 30% and leave the rest for the wildlife. It's an important thing to look after the plants for everyone's future. It's a living reference library, it's a scientific resource, but it wouldn't be anything without a label. These are my labels. These labels are guaranteed for 25 years. Now, labelling any collection is fundamentally very important, because if you don't label them, when you're dead, how are they going to work out which plant is which? Being a national collection holder, I feel that I'm a custodian of plants for the future. But while it's here, I'm going to enjoy it.
I wouldn't mind sharing a glass of champagne with Ed. Do you know what stuck with me with that, though, was his sentiment. You know, he was doing that to enjoy, but really, in a way, he was doing that for another generation. So, I'm back in my gravel garden, which is a garden I put together last summer, really. But what I'm really pleased with is things have started to seed around. That's what I wanted. I wanted to sort of end up with what I call cultivated chaos. So today, I'm going to plant some Allium purpureum, which is a lovely deep purple with a reddish tinge to it. But I'm planting them in the green. And what I mean by that is they're containerised bulbs. There's something that I did back end of last year. You can buy your bulbs in the green, so you can still definitely do this time of year. But by doing that, I get a real understanding of actually what the plants are going to look like. And I'm working like a little river that's going to go all the way through. So it's going to pick up on the greys of the Artemisia, go through the grasses, and then sort of finish itself at the Santolina there. So you can imagine the heads of the alliums and these grasses just moving themselves together. Still to come on today's programme, Mark Lane visits Denman's garden, home of the late John Brooks, one of Britain's most influential garden designers.
It's hard to believe that these were ideas that were put in practice in the 60s and 70s, and yet it still looks current today.
And we also meet Jamie Song, who's created a tropical paradise in his living room with a stunning array of houseplants.
This is the star of the show here, this Oxalis triangularis. It's possibly one of the largest specimens in the country.
But first, Francis has been to Gravetye Manor in West Sussex to see that wonderful collection of trees that have been planted with wildlife in mind.
The sound of bees is the sound of spring, as they make their way from flower to flower, searching for the vital food they need. And they do us a favour in return. It's been estimated that 1/3 of the food we eat relies on pollination by bees and other insects. Even closer to home, like here at Gravetye Manor, bees foraging for food in our gardens pollinate our flowers and trees, providing us with a wonderful variety of seeds and fruit. But there's a problem. As a result of habitat loss, pesticide use, disease and intensive farming methods, bee populations are in decline. 1/3 of the UK's bees have disappeared over the last 10 years, making it more important than ever for us gardeners to do our bit to help with this issue. There's a wonderful symbiotic relationship between bees and flowers. Most people don't know bees need a balanced diet like us. They forage for pollen and nectar. As they brush past the stamen, pollen is transferred onto them. The bee then flies away with the pollen attached to it, and this is deposited on the next flower. The bee gets its meal, the flower gets pollinated. By late spring, our flower beds and borders are abuzz with bees. But there is another way that we can provide them with the food they need earlier in the season, and that's by planting bee-friendly trees. The great thing about a tree is that you can get so many more flowers on it than your average garden plant. I mean, just take this Erica arborea. This is a tree heather, and it is awash with flowers for the bees. This is a really good plant for any garden. It's so easy. It will cope with drought and wind, so for a problem spot, this is the tree. And the lovely thing about this is it smells absolutely incredible when you're up close to it. And it makes such a huge impact from far back. But when you look closely, you can really see that detail. Fine little red circles within it, so there's something for everybody. And of course, plenty for the bees. Amelanchier lamarckii is very familiar to us on Garden as Well, but that's because it's such a good doer from a gardening perspective, especially in a small garden. It gives so much. It has lovely form, beautiful blossom, beautiful fruits, and then fantastic autumn colour, especially if you plant this in the sunshine. But more importantly, the blossom offers a really good early source of nectar for bees, and then the fruit later is fantastic because the birds love the seeds. So you could call it a win-win. There are 270 species of bee in the UK, with the vast majority being solitary bees. Different species are more prevalent depending on the time of year and the temperature. Bumblebees tolerate lower temperatures, while honeybees love the warmer weather. This is a tree that bees absolutely love. It's called Cercis, forest pansy. Now, it's a native to North America, but for a small garden, it's absolutely invaluable because it has such a beautiful shape. This has lovely, big, purple, heart-shaped leaves and pink flowers that are yet to open on this. Just a few more days and they'll be open. And the really unusual thing about Cercis is that it flowers on its bare branches. Now, it's believed that where this evolved in the forests of North America, that meant that all kinds of insects, not just flying ones, would have had access to that nectar. So it's something for all the pollinators in our gardens. Pyrus salicifolia, so called because it has willow-like or salix-like foliage. It's a really undervalued tree, but I can hear it buzzing already with bees and other insects, so it's very valued by our wildlife. And they have these lovely clusters of white flowers, but these open flowers are really accessible to bees and pollinators. They'll turn into small, inedible fruits, but birds really love them too. And with silver foliage, it makes it a really lovely addition if you're planting a white garden. Now, I think they can suffer from some rather insensitive pruning, but when you do it carefully and let the natural weeping habit show, it can be an absolutely stunning addition to any garden. This is also a fantastic tree if you live in an urban area because it's very resistant to air pollution, which makes it really good for us and really good for the bees. Now, we're used to seeing bees buzzing all over our orchards, but there are all kinds of ornamental fruit trees that you can buy that do exactly the same thing for pollinators. When you're picking them, though, make sure they have single flowers, because in double flowering plants, those nectaries where the food is have been bred away and replaced by petals. Now, this is an ornamental cherry called taihaku, meaning big white flowers, and you can see why. They are double the size of the average cherry blossom. Probably better for a slightly larger space because it will get quite tall, a lot taller than this, and the spread is huge. But if you have the space, plant one. The bees will thank you. It's important to remember that some trees and plants are pollinated by the wind and other types of insects. So when choosing your tree, check that yours is one the bees will enjoy. So next time you're looking for a new addition to the garden, spare a thought for the bees. Consider planting a tree that will give you structure, flowers, and maybe even some fruit, and be an invaluable source of food for our bees.
That's Isla. By the way, she's grown a little bit since we first moved in, but she's a good girl, aren't you? Good girl. Well, most of the time. Do you know what? That's an interesting way, isn't it, to plant your garden? You start thinking about the bees through the whole 12 months. With doing that, you're adding layers of interest, you know, so you're getting the joy as well. We added a hive last year, and we started with a really small nucleus of bees. And they've grown so much over the 12 months that we've had to split the hive in the last couple of weeks, and we're now adding a second beehive. And this is a slightly wilder part of the garden, and they are loving this white comfrey. And at the moment, I'm loving that bird cherry. Come on in. Good girl. So this is the latest project I've got on the go. Which are two water features. You wouldn't believe that these old tanks were literally being thrown away. Before we had a feature here, you came through the gateway and bang onto the massive lawn. So you had nothing to sort of think about and make you go in one direction or another. So I wanted to pause you. And that's exactly what these do, in quite a lovely but simple way. On top of that, the buxus hedging that sits around is going to carry that table out. So the features will actually look bigger than they are. And the reason I've gone for buxus is because I've already got it in the garden. So I've got a hedge that side with a big clip shape. And I'm trying to balance that up on the other side of the garden. So, you know, it just starts to link these little spaces together. If you repeat a plant down through a smaller space, that will give you that cohesion and bring everything together. So I've already built one, now it's time to just get the second one finished. See, these tanks are quite heavy and it needs to be level. So I've put a little concrete base in, so you've got a hard but level base to work off. And then as we fill with water, they're just going to become reflective surfaces. So next, we come to the hedging. A lot of us, we worry about buxus, don't we? But I'm quite lucky in this area in a way is that we're very, very dry. So we don't really suffer with blight. If you're in a damper area and you are worried, maybe use something else. Ilex crenata, you could use even something like saga coca, which is winter box. So there's plenty of other plants that you could use to clip in quite formal shapes. Even lavender would look quite nice, you know, around here. Size-wise, I could have gone for bigger plants and made this into an instant feature. I haven't for two reasons. One being that, actually, it would be quite expensive. But the second is, I want them to establish really good root systems. So, let's get them in. So what I'm going to do is set these lines up to start with. As I said, I've been quite technical around this one and really worked to quite tight measurements. So I'll just check what I had. All right, about 18 centimetres, so hello you. All right. So the first thing I need to do is just set the tape measure up. Yes, thank you very much. Thank you. And I'm just using iron pins just to hold the line. So if you imagine, and then all I'm going to do then is work that to the other end there. So I'm just going to put another pin in. If I get it as close as I can always adjust them once I set that line up. Nice and tight. It would be more useful if you could tie and things like that, you know, rather than just eat, wouldn't it? Eh? Right, so get that loop round, pull that all the way through and tighten that off. So any hedge you're putting in really, you know, if you want that straight line, it's worth working, you know, to this sort of detail, it really is. That's it, now we're set to go. I've kept them about 30 centimetres apart. If you put the plants too close together, not only are they starting to fight for the same, I suppose, room under the ground, but the quicker these plants grow together, you're going to cut down that air circulation. So just giving them the time to grow into each other, the plants are going to be healthier for it. 1, 2, and just start to prep that hole. So don't plant them too deep, but they want to be quite firm. And then we just literally work our way along. When we get all this in, a really good watering, make sure over that first season the roots really get to establish themselves. I think hopefully this demonstrates that you don't need masses of space to have maybe a nice feature just on the edge of your patio. And garden design, I think, is now a lot more accessible to so many of us. And I think that was partly driven by one person, and that's John Brooks. And Mark Lane has gone down to Denman's garden in West Sussex, where John used to work and live, just to find out a little bit more about the man's thought process and the way that he put gardens together.
With summer in sight, if you're like me, you just want to get outside and enjoy your garden and use it like an extension to your home. Remarkably, this is a relatively new idea, a concept championed by the late John Brooks in the 1960s, when he coined the phrase, the room outside.
John Brooks was largely regarded as the man responsible for the modern garden and brought design into the average back garden, making them spaces to be enjoyed, lived in, and not just maintained.
And it's here at Denman's in West Sussex, his former home, that his design ideas are perfectly illustrated. The walled garden really epitomises John Brooks' idea of the outdoor room.
So what would you normally do if this was a room? You would have a settee or a sofa. And that's what John has. He has his blue benches, one of his favourite spots where he used to come and sit at the end of the day and watch the sunsets. In a house, you would adorn it, wouldn't you, with carpets, with small objects. But here, in the outdoor room, he's added this magnificent urn. And in the far distance, we have these wonderful curved Buxus balls. And what's great about that is that it draws your eye out to the distance.
His friend and former student, Gwendolyn Van Passion, learned from him firsthand and is now the owner of the garden.
Can you just explain a little bit more about this outdoor room idea?
He felt that people in Britain didn't spend enough time outside, that if you're going to create a garden space outside of your house, it should be associated with your living style inside. It was just another room, and you should design it the same way you would do an interior. You'd have your place for your children to play, you'd have a place for your barbecue, you'd have a place to read, but it was all about how you use the space.
So you really must have learnt about this grid that everyone sort of thinks about when they think about John Brooks.
Yes, so if you took what you saw on the vertical plane and you popped it down on the horizontal plane, you got the proportions of the building right. And suddenly he had a grid pattern that he could use to ensure that all his lawns and terraces and flower beds were proportionate to the house.
This is the clock house where John lived and worked. You can see the principles of his design ethos. You've got the house behind me, and if you take the house and put it flat, almost like its shadow, you can see how the lines come off and form this grid system. You have a line that comes off where the tower is. It then goes off at a right angle parallel to the house. It then juts out again, right where the Juliet balcony is, and then returns all the way along parallel with this long building.
John first came here in the 1970s with his design students. It was then owned by an innovative plants woman, Joyce Robinson. They became great friends when John set up his design school at Denman's.
John used to laugh and say that it took Joyce about 10 years to let go of the garden, and it took him about 10 years to feel that the garden was really his. So you could imagine the tussle between these two formidable people, very opinionated people, as they sort of created this amazing space.
Although we always think of Denman's as John Brooks' garden, we should always remember that Mrs. Robinson, a really keen plantswoman, was here before. She went travelling in 1977 to Greece and really loved the way that the plants grew out of rocks and crevices. So she wanted to create something like that when she came back. Now that was really innovative back in the 1970s. And this is the result, a meandering, dry riverbed made from local stones and pebbles and rocks. John saw this and absolutely loved it. He described the planting as scatterings, as if the way seeds are just scattered all the way across. I always thought with John Brooks, the plants were almost like the last element. So it was about form, texture, shape, and then you looked at the plants.
You'll see throughout the garden, you always see that structure, form, and texture. He loved that architectural style, and it was sort of a punctuation mark in a garden for him.
This is a really good example of John Brooks' architectural plants. Just look at the way we have this beautiful curve of this box. And then just peeking behind, you've got this spikiness of the Mahonia. And then you've got this real acid green of the euphorbia, and then the glaucous blues coming through. It's just a beautiful picture to look at.
John was still gardening at Denman's until his death in 2018. Gwendolyn is now busy renovating the garden and ensuring it remains true to his design ideas.
When I look around this garden, it's hard to believe that these were ideas that were put in practice in the 60s and 70s, and yet it still looks current today. What a great legacy to leave behind.
Hopefully John will have approved of my water feature. Do you know what? He goes back deep into my psyche, even as a child. My dad was a landscaper and worked on John Brooks Gardens at the Chelsea Flower Show, so I've always been aware of John as I've gone into design. Amazing man. So there you go. That's the last one in. I won't necessarily prune them, but eventually what I'm looking to do is get a really crisp line that sits the same height as that water. So you imagine you get this lovely sort of green table that moves into water. It's actually quite simple, but really effective, I think. For me, no other sight says spring more than a woodland floor transformed into a sea of bluebells. And a great place to enjoy them is Coton Manor in Northamptonshire. At this time of year, there are loads of flowers vying for our attention. Aberglasney Gardens in Carmarthenshire has some brilliant spring displays, and the Camasias in their woodlands are really worth a visit. If you're a camellia fan, then Treeba Garden in Cornwall has a fantastic collection you can enjoy right now. Rockeries really are back in fashion, and the Royal Botanic Garden in Edinburgh boasts a stunning one, full of delicate spring alpines. If you fancy a tulip fix, then the garden at Ford Abbey in Somerset could be the place for you, with over 40,000 tulips in bloom. And RHS Wisley in Surrey, they are celebrating National Gardening Week with a whole host of events. To be fair, you don't actually have to leave your own sofa to enjoy beautiful plants. Houseplants have really come back on the scene in the last couple of years, and Jamie Song from London has created his own little paradise in his front room.
The first thing I see when I come up here to my indoor garden is that my plants have already woken up before me. It just like coming into a world that's already alive. I love taking care of them, and this time you spend taking care of them is for me a little bit like meditation. And When I watch a plant, I can almost see the circle of life because, you know, when a leaf dies, a new one comes out, and it's just beautiful. For me, the most important thing when it comes to designing with houseplants is that you want the plants to thrive, because a sick plant or a plant that's not doing well is not going to make you happy in the end. So I always place them where they would thrive. And then in terms of designing my indoor garden, I do my best to create different heights, but I also like to mimic nature a little bit. I've hung a lot of my plants up in the air. The ones that I like to hang are the rainforest cacti, the ones that are epiphytic in nature, so they attach themselves to trees and grow downwards. They have long leaves and such unusual shapes, so it really makes you feel like you're walking through a tropical rainforest. This is a neon pothos. In nature, a pothos would kind of coil up a tree and climb. So I decided to experiment with making it a climbing plant. So I found these little plastic clips that attach to the wall without damaging the wall. And I put the stems through the clips to create this vertical garden. And it's really become a focal point of the living room. Everybody is so impressed by it. And people love to sit on the sofa and take selfies here. So these are my mid-level plants, and they're actually my favorite plants. They're very special plants that I like to keep close to me when I'm sitting on the sofa. This is the star of the show here, this Oxalis triangularis. It looks like 100 beautiful purple butterflies. And I'm so proud of it because when I got it a few years ago, it was in a pot this big, about 10 centimeters. And now it's possibly one of the largest specimens in the country. And the special thing about it is that all of these little butterflies close at night, and in the morning when the sun comes out, they open. And they actually move towards the sun during the course of the day. And it's really one of my favorites. The plants that I like to place on the lower level, directly on the floor, are the ones that have leaves facing up. So they look the best when you're looking from above down at them. This is a philodendron xanadu. I got it from a large flat pack furniture shop, and it's been with me for such a long time, I can't imagine living without it. A very interesting thing about this plant is that when it was young, the leaves were not serrated at all. But as it aged, the shape of the leaves changed and became more and more beautiful. And now each leaf looks like a giant hand facing up. And for this plant, I actually installed a mirror up high on the wall so the sunlight gets reflected onto this spot. And I just want to give it as much sun as I possibly can. If you walk around my home, you'll see a lot of repetitions in color, in texture, actually. And I have orchids dotted around the room, and it's like they're birds singing to each other. And it just gives this cohesiveness, if you will. Just like a painting needs a frame, I believe every plant needs its own pot. One of my favorite plants is my jewel orchid, or Lutetia discolor. I love its black velvety leaves. It flowers year after year in December or January, and I found this perfect pot for it. And it has a zigzaggy black pattern that goes so well with the lines on the leaves. I feel like if you only have plants that you love and you put them in the pots that you love, the stands that you love, and you combine them with the art that you love, it's a winning combination. Everyone should have houseplants.
I don't know about you, but I found that really inspiring. It proves that you don't even need a garden to create something wonderful, and he really has there. And maybe he's made me rethink houseplants, because, being honest, I don't really grow them. I've got enough going on out in the garden. Nearest I get is these aeoniums, which need winter protection. But I'm having a bit of a bittersweet moment. One of them has come into flower, and it looks absolutely stunning, it really does. But an awful lot of these, once they're flowered, they set seed and they die. So I'm probably going to lose that plant. But that's a single stem, whereas here I've got some flowering going on a multi-stem plant. That means actually the main plant will probably be all right. And all I'm doing really at the moment is just giving them a bit of a clean up and getting them ready to go out in the garden. So that's one job I'm working on, but here's a few more for the weekend. With plants now marching into full growth, it's a good time to keep an eye out for the pests. Cover your fruit and vegetables. If you see any aphids, they could be removed manually, or like me, rely on Mother Nature. It's a good time to think about hardening off your more tender plants. Make sure the cold frames and the greenhouse are open during the day and there's a good air circulation. Bring the plants out into the open for a good 7 to 10 days in the daytime before you leave them out overnight. Don't forget those shrubs. They will really benefit from a general purpose feed. I keep it simple. I just use chicken pellets that I sprinkle at the bottom of the plant, and then in drier conditions, I'll make sure that I water it in. Really have had a great day in the garden. I've enjoyed sharing it and showing you around. So, see you again soon. Goodbye.